Welcome back to the Play-by-Play, a sports media talk show from Awful Announcing, where the biggest football weekend of the year is here, and somehow all the other stuff is taking up our attention. We will return to the NFL and the college football playoff next week, but for now, a lot to recap from our few weeks off as we reviewed 2024, previewed 2025, so we're back here to do that. I am Brendon Kleen, staff writer at Awful Announcing. That over there is Ben Axelrod, my co-host and a senior editor at Awful Announcing. We're joined once again by Drew Lerner, our colleague at Awful Announcing, to talk through a bombshell lawsuit at FS1, the debut of WWE's Raw on Netflix, and ESPN trying late night again. I got a quick question for you both off the top. I wanted to just, set the stage, not ignore the elephant in the room that football's here in a big, big way. But I also can't ignore the biggest sports media story of anything going on right now, which is Jerry Jones's vying for an Emmy. And I just wanted to ask you, is there this is on Landman on, I believe, Paramount Plus, where he's basically playing himself but doing a very good job at it while John Hamm's in a hospital bed. Is there any other sports owner, Ben, in America who could have done this? Is there any, or is that just so purely what Jerry Jones is to all of us that it is only him that could have done it?
Yeah, he's kind of the last great American sports owner. And I don't mean that great in the sense of like he builds winners. I mean that in terms of being a big personality. I mean, there's a ton of copycats around the league. And I feel a certain way about Jimmy Haslam with the Browns, but I doubt saying Jimmy Haslam's name resonates with you guys the same way that Jerry Jones' name resonates with all of us. So, yeah, I mean, Jerry Jones is, I think, the last of his kind.
Yeah, it's the longevity, and he's really the only owner that I feel like has crossover appeal. Like, if you put any other, major North American sports owner into a television show, there's probably like a 20% chance I'd recognize them, maybe even lower than that. And that's as someone who watches all this stuff. So it's pretty impressive that Jerry Jones has that crossover.
The only other one I'll throw out there before we get to our instant replay this week is Mark Cuban. I think very easily could have done this, but now calling him an owner, he's like a minority owner. He's more known for the other stuff, I think, at this point, now that he sold the team. But shout out to Mark Cuban as if he needed that. Instant replay of the week. A former hairstylist based in FS1's LA studios has sued the network, the parent company, and multiple talent at the network, including Skip Bayless and Joy Taylor. There are many accusations. Drew wrote them up for awfulannouncing.com. There are many ripple effects, I'm sure, to come. But, Drew, can you try to encapsulate kind of the gist of what happened here, maybe leaving aside the smaller accusations with people who we haven't heard of, to give like the basics of why this has to matter from a sports media standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, beyond the salaciousness of it all, right? I mean, there are allegations ranging from sexual harassment, racist comments, numerous cases of infidelity at the network that all had an impact on, the actual talent, what shows they were ending up on, the power dynamics at Fox Sports 1. And obviously, what is being alleged in this lawsuit is just of great interest if you're a sports fan, right? Skip Bayless is obviously probably the biggest figure implicated in this lawsuit. And the headline that, every outlet has rightfully gone with is that he allegedly offered this hairstylist $1.5 million for sex. That's on its surface level an absurd thing. And that's really just scratching the surface. There's, obviously allegations regarding Joy Taylor, how she ended up in the positions that she got at Fox Sports 1 on both Undisputed and then later Speak for Yourself. There's, of course, mentions of Emmanuel Acho in relation to Joy Taylor. There's Fox Sports 1 executive Charlie Dixon being involved in all of this, allegedly.
Yeah, and former ESPN executive. So,
yes.
Yeah, that ranges even further.
So, it's a lot to unpack, and there's reason that it has gotten as much attention as it has.
Yeah, so I think that you summed it up well. To me, the bottom lines are Skip Bayless, the rare accusation that's illegal in like multiple different ways, if that one were to play out in any kind of truthful way. Mistreating and offering this woman things and just, allegedly acting in a very unbecoming way. Joy Taylor, using relationships with men at the network in order to gain, move up in the company. That is the allegation against her. And then a lot of management level things that I think just speak to clearly at least one half of the company on the West Coast being run allegedly in a very immoral way, but also just in a not very, becoming and professional way, of course, to say the least. So, Ben, what were your reactions? Again, trying to talk about this in a way that is kind of that 30,000 foot view way. We've talked a lot about FS1's revamp on the show this fall, Skip leaving, where they're kind of going with the Colin Cowherd free agency looming. How does this affect that?
Yeah, so just taking a step back and stuff like this is just like so hard to talk about because there are allegations and you don't want to trip over anything and accuse anyone of something they didn't do. But just based on the lawsuit, like I think all the attention has gone to Skip Bayless and Joy Taylor. And I think in Skip's case, that's probably right because the other accusation in here, I'd argue the biggest accusations are allegations of sexual battery, both against Charlie Dixon, who the hairstylist alleges touched her inappropriately at a party, and Skip Bayless, who was giving her lingering hugs and kisses, unwanted kisses on the cheek. And so when you bring in Joy Taylor, this is like what I've wrestled with is what is Joy Taylor actually being accused of? Like, why is her sex life relevant to a lawsuit like this? And Joy is accused of, I guess you could call it racial discrimination. She made, comments that were racially based, mocking the woman's Persian heritage. But the reason why Joy's sex life is relevant to this story is I think that it shows or it attempts to portray how Fox Sports has this environment where this is expected of you, that you use your sexuality to climb the ranks. And so the hairdresser or hairstylist feels like, that she's being harassed and she's being assaulted essentially. And that's what she is supposed to go along with if she wants to advance there. So I don't like, where do you guys come down on the Joy Taylor aspect of this? Because there's a part of me that thinks like, yeah, this is relevant. And then there's a part of me that thinks like, man, this lawsuit's airing a lot of dirty laundry, and I'm still not fully sure of what Joy Taylor's actually being accused of from a legal standpoint here.
Yeah, I think we should say, right, that like whether everything contained in this lawsuit is true to the exact way that it's stated in the lawsuit, putting these things in there is very clearly it's bringing on a fight. It's initiating guerrilla warfare with the network to get attention in exactly the way that they're getting it when we're talking about it here and the way that it's being talked about on social media in order to get to what I think you're right about, Ben, are more serious, like, a lawsuit has to be about something from the plaintiff. And in this case, it's, retaliation, wrongful termination, withholding of wages, and kind of, labor-related things. And so when I look at the Joy Taylor side of it, I focus on the fact that the hairdresser, Nushin Faraji is her name, she's been made public, that she is saying that basically the power that Taylor was able to grab onto by allegedly pursuing these men at the network was then used to, manipulate the hairdresser in some ways, to obviously orchestrate and manipulate movement around the network and who got what jobs and what people were aligned with whoever, and basically create a workplace where this type of thing could happen, where somebody could be prevented from moving up, where somebody could not move to a show that they wanted to move to, where the culture and the leadership and management style would be such that somebody could have grounds to, obviously make these claims. So I think that that's why it matters. But what do you think, Drew? You read it probably more thoroughly even than we did.
Yeah, I think you both kind of hit the nail on the head here. This was relevant because it helps build the narrative of what the culture was at Fox Sports, or what the culture allegedly was. And I think the remarkable thing about this lawsuit, it's 42 pages. I'm no lawyer, but from what I've read out there, this is rather uncommon how detailed these allegations are. And it seems as if the hairstylist, she kept a pretty thorough diary. There are
For
exact
7-8 years.
Yes, there are exact dates and months present in the lawsuit. So these claims can be corroborated in some form or fashion, given that there are dates involved here. And then you also kind of got at this, Brendon. This is like a class action lawsuit. And once again, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe, part of that, the reason that so much of this detail is included in the lawsuit is because it is claiming that there was widespread, the victims were widespread in this case. This is not just limited to the hairstylist. So the fact that, maybe on the one hand, Joy Taylor's dirty laundry is being aired out, but it's relevant because it impacted all of these lower level employees.
Yeah, the other thing I would add there too, that you wrote about in your article, Drew, that I think is partly how we can answer Ben's question, is the allegations related to Dixon, right? And so there's two things I think specifically that matter on that side of things. And so Dixon is the guy that one of the men that Taylor allegedly developed a sexual relationship with across years that allowed her to, gain influence and move up. He allegedly kept that situation going and kept it quiet and kept it useful by paying his wife with Fox's money, according to the lawsuit, and paying people in Taylor's life, including one of her ex-husbands, with Fox's money, according to the lawsuit. So that part of it, I think, not only loops Taylor into it and explains why she would be kind of, in the crossfire here, but also speaks to what Drew's talking about, which is that this thing is bigger, and there could be another hairstylist, another production assistant, another that or this person who signs on to this thing and says, oh yeah, those two acting like this also impacted me, let's go.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that early on in the lawsuit, the lawsuit said that they could possibly add more defendants, including Fox Sports' Eric Shanks, and the other name's Silverman. The other name's slipping my mind. I perhaps got that wrong, but other Fox Sports executives could very well be implicated in this. So right now, I think this is kind of just the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I don't know about you, Ben, when I first saw this come across, because it was over the weekend and I wasn't, on shift working at Awful Announcing, I was like, another one of these, whatever. I won't even have to pay attention to this. And then I kept seeing it get more and more pickup, and I was like, okay, it must be pretty salacious. And then you really read it, and I don't think it's an overreaction to treat this seriously. And I have a broader point about this, but I wanted to pass it back to you because I know you asked the question and then didn't get to answer it. What do you think, kind of, again, big picture, why do these people's involvement in all this matters, and kind of, I guess, where do you see it going from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, Joy Taylor and Skip Bayless are getting the headlines here, but I think the bigger picture story here is the culture at Fox Sports. I think that's the main point in the lawsuit. And it's funny to joke about Emmanuel Acho and Joy Taylor. That's been the reaction on social media, or make memes about Skip Bayless. But this speaks to a very bad culture at Fox Sports that implicates top level executives, or at least one top level executive. And it's Fox in general is a company that's gone through this on its news side already, or something similar. So to me, that's the big story here, while everybody's making memes and making jokes. And I get it. But I think if this story is going to move forward and we're going to see continuation of it, it's not going to be people coming out and saying, I know this about Joy Taylor, I know this about Skip Bayless. It's going to be people saying I was treated this way at Fox. And that could have even wider ranging tentacles in terms of the talent that it involves.
Yeah, to clear up what you referenced, Drew, Charlie Dixon was the executive vice president of content at FS1 at the time that a lot of this happened. Later in the intro to the lawsuit, it names Mark Silverman, who is the president and COO of Fox Sports, and Eric Shanks, the CEO and executive producer. And it says they may become named defendants based upon discovery yet to be basically conducted. So, yeah, it's pretty big. And like the bigger picture thing that this kind of speaks to in my point of view is, and Ben Koo at Awful Announcing wrote a really long, thorough article like at the beginning of FS1's inception about the kind of editorial and business direction and oversight and lack thereof at FS1. It's basically a network that was created because Fox had some money. They wanted some studio programming. They figured they could get some nice cable carriage revenue out of it. And they said, why not? Let's compete with ESPN. It's always been the little brother. It's always been, honestly, somewhat of a like black sheep of the family within Fox. There's fairly rarely even Fox talent that cross promotes anything on FS1. The shows are constantly being revamped and restructured. And I just feel like, without making too strong of a connection, it doesn't surprise me that a network run with that little oversight and direction on that side of things would also be run without a lot of oversight and professionalism in every other way that running a company has to go on. And so, like, if you're telling me, oh, the network that can't stop recycling things and doesn't ever seem to know what it's necessarily wanting to do allowed stuff like this to go on, I'm not surprised. And I think that's part of why it's become such a yes, there is obvious gross reasons for Joy Taylor getting sucked up into it the way that she has. But other than that, I think part of why this is stuck is because people are so ready to make fun of FS1. And I don't know if this stuff's true, but I think the reaction tells you a lot of why this kind of is so believable to people, is because we already watch the shows and we see everything going on and we think, yeah, they don't know what they're doing. So again, I don't know if that's true, but I do know that the other side is true. So it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of what's in this lawsuit proved to be true in some way.
It's kind of, I mean, maybe I'm just naive, but to me, like, one of the more shocking parts about it was it's hard to imagine like this world existing in a post Me Too era. Like it seems like we went through Me Too, right? And again, that's probably naive and male privilege and whatever you want to call it. But like the idea of like a network star just allegedly sleeping her way to the top, like that just feels like a story from 2015, not 2025. So that was, I guess, for me at least, a part of where the shock came from. But as you lay it out like that, yeah, I mean, it definitely adds up there. And it's not the other thing I would say is it's not like you've had a lot of people jumping to their defense. Like you've had some people,
or them jumping to their own defense, most notably, right? We haven't even seen a peep from anybody, even people outside of Shannon Sharp, who has the smallest mention and I think rightly felt the need to defend himself. Everyone else has stayed completely quiet, Drew.
Yeah, I think the other thing we need to mention is that a lot of the characters here are taking the power through approach, right? Joy Taylor was on her show yesterday on Monday. Obviously, no mention there. Skip Bayless released his Monday podcast. Absolutely no mention of the allegations. Just talked about the Cowboys like he usually does. And you know, I know that like no lawyer that these people retain is going to tell them to talk about this in public. But there's also an aspect of, if there's no truth to it, why aren't you defending yourself? So
yeah, we've seen a million times we object to the allegations and we hope to fight for ourselves in court when that time comes. Until then, we'll continue to do our work on FS1.
Exactly. And
forward, right?
And the most damning part of this to me, allowing Joy Taylor to go on her show yesterday, kind of just shows the level of like how deep this runs at Fox Sports, right? I think any other network, if these allegations were levied against a talent, they're going to release a statement saying we're doing an internal investigation. We're taking he or she off the air for now until we complete that investigation. Fox instead is just letting things go as if nothing has happened. And that's really just a very strange strategy to me, given just the seriousness of all of this.
Well, and the person in charge.
Go ahead, Ben.
Charlie Dixon. He's fighting for his professional life right now. So I would assume he's the person involved with making that decision. So if he's in the crosshairs, like, what's he got to lose? He's trying to power through. So why wouldn't he have Joy Taylor try to power through? And I could at least understand the strategy from the sense that, okay, like, she goes on yesterday, it's awkward, it becomes a meme, and then nobody's talking about it from that standpoint today, like, or less people are, and it's going to just get less and less and less. But I don't know if that might be a smart strategy in the short term. I don't know if it's going to be a smart strategy in the long term. I think Fox could. I'm just surprised there aren't people higher up making these decisions. Maybe they are, and these are the decisions they're making, but it just kind of seems like the inmates are running the asylum from this standpoint.
Well, that's what I was going to say to kind of put a bow on this is you look at FS1's history, it has many people who have unceremoniously departed the network from its early days. You have executives at this company who have, been part of scandals like this in the past. The overall MO of the network has been to, like Drew said, just kind of push through, finger in the air, and move on. And if people need to get fired along the way, obviously that will happen. But you zoom up one more layer. I mean, we're talking about Fox. Take the sports out of it, and Me Too already came up in this conversation. This was one of the patient zero companies for a lot of what we hoped had maybe evolved about the media business, but now are realizing more and more it at least is not cured of these problems. And so I can't sit here and say, like, I'm shocked that an upper management of this network would allow something like this to happen or handle the fallout, at least in the first 48 hours since, the way that they have. This is kind of what we've seen for years at this place.
And if I could, Brendon, apologies. I'd like to zoom it up one more level beyond that, because you're completely right. This is how the corporation writ large handles things. But this is also, if you're looking at the business side, a company that is really ripe for acquisition. A lot of analysts, in the media industry think that Fox this year specifically, given what has happened in the Murdoch lawsuit in Nevada with their family trust, think that, Fox could be in the market to sell some of these assets. And when you have a lawsuit like this levied against, one of your, prized possessions here in Fox Sports, it just makes it all the easier to maybe say, hey, this is worth selling. Because when you look at the Murdoch family, they like having sports, right? It has been the driver for a lot of their business in America for a long time, being able to secure the carriage fees, not only for, FS1, but the fees for Fox as well, and Fox News, because it's all bundled together. Now, in this environment, when they're looking to sell, a lawsuit like this makes it very easy to say, hey, we're gonna slim down even further. We're gonna take our most prized possession, maybe Fox News, spin it out, sell it to someone who agrees with that political slant, and really just kind of get out of this media conglomerate business as they're in right now.
One thing, just to end this on a lighter note, as light as a situation like this can be, and maybe we'll edit this out. Maybe I shouldn't be saying, but I think one part of the lawsuit that was objectively funny was the accuser going out of her way to point out that Colin Cowherd was a gentleman. It's you're reading the lawsuit, and it's page after page of disgusting allegation and just everybody's dirty laundry getting aired. And then there's just this one line that makes sure that everybody knows who's reading it, that Colin Cowherd was a complete gentleman the entire time she worked with him. I thought that was funny.
I think the only way that Colin comes out looking better is if it's dated of like on October 18th, 2022, Colin Cowherd told me that he really had appreciated my hair dressing this week. Like
It has to be oddly specific. Yeah.
Exactly. Like we saw some very specific dated and timed things related to Skip and others. I think Colin, could have helped him out if he got the same treatment on the positive end. Let's get into it. Raw debuted on Netflix on Monday, January 6th. We have been waiting months for this, and really we have been waiting years for this when you think about it kind of representing in conjunction with the Christmas Day broadcast a couple of weeks before Netflix's arrival, their triumphant arrival into live sports. I mentioned at the very top of the show, Ben, we had a couple episodes in the can. We haven't talked since like at least a week before the Christmas stuff even happened. So I think we should start there. Fast forward all the way through to which was last night as we're recording this, and then hopefully actually look even more forward on the Netflix side of things. But to me, Ben, this was, and you wrote about the Christmas stuff, you wrote about Raw. Am I like a sap or a capitalist pig to say that it kind of feels cool to have a little bit of like stable ground with what sports is going to be from a branding and presentation standpoint again? Because we have just been everywhere for so long, and I was kind of like, Netflix, like, take me home. Let me just fall into your lap and enjoy this, because it was cool.
Yeah, I think most of our podcasts have aged pretty well. I think our Tyson Paul podcast.
I don't take it back, though.
Well,
I don't take it back. They deserved it.
It's like, I'm an Ohio State fan, right? And I've been harping on Ryan Day all year. And now Ryan Day's about to win a national championship. And people are going to be like, well, don't you feel dumb? And it's like, no, because I was right at the time. And now now I'm wrong. But I was right at the time. We were right at the time about the Mike Tyson, Jake Paul fight being a disaster. It was a disaster. But it feels like, and it even felt this way leading up to the Christmas Day game, even though we were just giving them the benefit of the doubt that the technology was going to work this time around, even though they were going to triple the viewers they did for Tyson Paul. But when you saw the lineup they were putting together, just from the studio talent and the play-by-play talent, like, you could really see that they were putting their resources behind this, and that this was going to be a big deal. And like, it was going to be too big to fail. They weren't going to let this fail. And so I thought that Christmas Day was an unmitigated success. I thought that it announced Netflix's arrival as a live streamer and a player in this field moving forward, because there were very fair questions about it after that Mike Tyson, Jake Paul debacle. I really think we're going to see an increased presence from the NFL moving forward on Netflix. I'm personally bummed. Like, we're not scheduled to get that studio team until next Christmas at this point. Like, that was the best NFL studio team they've had. Those were two of the best.
If the networks don't realize, hey, maybe we should stop giving them our best talent and showing off and giving these talent a taste of working somewhere else for basically nothing.
Well, I think that too. I think that speaks to all of this, is that not only does Netflix want it to work, the NFL wants it to work. And Netflix, because of its global reach, like, this isn't just about having a place to put your product. This is about growing your product and expanding your own reach. And so I think that's true for the NFL. And I think that's especially true for WWE. And so now you move from having this one-off Christmas Day doubleheader, which was a smashing success, and now they have a weekly program. And even if you're not a pro wrestling fan, WWE Raw has been the longest running episodic weekly television show dating back to 1993. It's one of the most highly watched television shows each week, year in and year out. And so the fact that that's now going to be weekly on Netflix is a really, really big deal for both WWE and Netflix. And you saw it on Monday night with the first episode of Raw on Netflix. They put out a WrestleMania level show. Like, that was some of the matches on that card were reserved for WrestleMania, their biggest show of the year, and they put them on Netflix. Like, they want this to work because they know that this is their best chance at expanding their reach. And so I think that's the for lack of a better term, like, the magic part about all this is this isn't just these leagues and these entities like WWE putting their products on a streaming platform, it's their way to grow these products. And so you're going to get their best foot forward. And I think that's what we saw with Christmas Day. And I think that's what we're going to see with WWE and whatever else joins the fold moving forward.
Yeah, Michael Cole's final words of the broadcast were the Netflix era. Like how many times did the word Netflix get said on the freaking broadcast? It felt like it's like the deal's already done, guys. It's here. You know what I mean? Like if somebody's watching, they know it's on Netflix. It's already happening. It's live right now on the platform. But I just think it speaks to like the genuine enthusiasm that everybody had, from Triple H introducing the whole thing the way that he did to pulling out all the stops with guests. But let's go back to the Christmas a little bit before we move fully into Raw, because Drew, I felt like one, the viewership, which Ben referenced for the Mike Tyson thing, once Nielsen actually got involved on Christmas Day, I think we saw, the Tyson stuff was a little silly, but the numbers were, I think, really promising versus, yes, down from what Fox and CBS had done the previous year, but still, I felt at least closer than maybe, they could have been. And obviously the experience of watching, again, just to completely soak into, maybe we can get a Netflix sponsorship. I'm not sure. I'll just talk my way through it. Like, it was cool to watch. I liked the experience of sitting there. It felt like as good, if not better, than any other place I go to watch football.
No doubt. And when you talk about the viewership, right, I believe the games on Netflix averaged 24.5 million or something around there. And the games on CBS and Fox the prior year, and NBC, I should mention, were around the 27, 28 million mark. So, you're losing a few millions viewers, but, this is something that leagues have done, since the advent of cable, right? They are sacrificing reach for profits, right? Netflix is going to pay them in the $150 million range, whatever it was, for these games every Christmas. And that is worth losing a few million viewers for the NFL, especially when you consider just how large of a platform Netflix is these days. I think only losing 3 million viewers is an undeniable success for the NFL when you compare it to broadcast television. I mean, you see all of these leagues that are moving a large part of their inventory back from cable to broadcast now because they need that reach that they lost. And the NFL is once again zagging when everyone else is zigging, right? They are going back to a limited reach platform because they know they have the leverage to do so, and then they can get more money out of it. I think it's a genius move. And really the only question is, with regards to Netflix, is there enough out there these next 5-10 years for them to really bolster any sort of live sports platform?
Yeah, well, I think the other part of it is the NFL knows that it is the pull, right? So even the NBA is probably rooting for the NFL on Christmas to go well in a weird way, even though it's smashing them numbers wise or jeopardizing. They had a good year, but you know what I mean? Because if they can be the proof of concept that sports on streaming can not only work technologically the way we're talking about, but also be something that keeps people coming back and developing that habit. And I do think that that's part of the reason that something like Raw can also matter, is people refer to this a lot when the NBA was negotiating its rights, that the idea of this volume and inventory type of sport that develops a habit and keeps people on a platform. Things like that also matter when you're introducing live to a platform that people had thought of as reruns of Suits and whatever, right? So I feel like these are kind of two distinct strategy plays for Netflix, Ben, but I also think one of the questions I had coming off of both Christmas, where Beyonce's performing and the talent we talked about, from Mina Kimes to Ian Eagle to Greg Olson, as well as Raw and the guests that they brought out, is it can't feel this special forever. So that's kind of the funny thing, is I can sit here and be like, oh, it's so cool, but 6 months from now, Raw is just going to be Raw again, and Hulk Hogan's not going to be there. So, and Christmas NFL, we'll see. We can get to there when we kind of talk about some events that need to be Netflixified. We might come back to football there, but that part was lingering. It's not going to be like this every time.
Yeah, I figured you would ask me about like what I thought about the presentation from a WWE
Yeah, how is it
standpoint.
different? Because I don't watch every week, so that's one thing I want to know. Even though I obviously know the guests were cool, but what it looked like, how it felt, what was different?
Yeah, so they've been moving dating back to last year when they hired Lee Fitting. Like they've been moving to this more sports-like presentation, but this felt like it like fully formed and fully fleshed out. Like this felt like they have figured out a way that this isn't just you're watching a weekly television show. You're watching a live event. You're watching something that's happening in a city with a live audience that is happening in this very moment, and it feels exciting. It felt more like UFC than it did WWE. And maybe that's they changed the referee outfits to look more like UFC. The ring mat is now littered with advertisements, but you could definitely just
Including
tell.
a Saudi, nice little Saudi logo. Yeah, that was great.
Well, the Royal Rumble is going to be there next year now. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, like I want to see what it looks like next week, and I want to see what it looks like in a few weeks. I'm going to Monday Night Raw at the week after the Royal Rumble when it comes to Cleveland. So like I'm excited to see it live and see how it translates. But there definitely was they definitely leaned into their sports like presentation, which I think is what Netflix wants. But I also think that, yeah, it's going to be, how do they keep this pace? You're not going to be able to do a WrestleMania show every week. So what does it look like when this is just a random Monday Night Raw in the middle of July? That to me is going to be interesting. But I mean, yeah, I mean, first impressions are everything. And if you're going to do it, you might as well do it big your first time around.
Yeah, Raw was in Phoenix on November 25th, and I was very bothered that it couldn't have just gotten after the Netflix flip, because I would have been much more interested in going. Tickets were like dirt cheap to go, but I'm not even a wrestling guy. I was just curious because of this whole thing. Honestly, the Raw side, we talked about like the wrestling guests, the WWE guests, but also it reminded me in a weird way of the Netflix Tom Brady roast, in that the people that they brought out to attend, they basically just went like sports media influencers, right? Like Bill Simmons is there, and
Kay Adams.
Travis Scott was involved. Kay Adams. They had like Hollywood people. Macaulay Culkin was on camera at one point. And so it being in LA, add into it dome, this new arena, and obviously placing very carefully calculated invitations to some people who were going to not only be recognizable on the broadcast, but talk about it ideally in their spheres, reminded me of how Rich Eisen couldn't shut up about the Tom Brady roast for like 2 weeks after he was there. So yeah, I think that this all is successful rollout, but we'll see, I think, what comes next. Netflix has 280 million subscribers. We talked about the NFL viewership, and a lot of, I think, sports media people have been kind of saying that they're getting to the point where they can credibly rival, because they are global, the type of exposure that you get with, Fox being on TV sets in the United States. Like, it's not really that different. But I think they very clearly also still see themselves, for now at least, as a place that they want to feel special, even if Raw's not going to be like this every week. Like they want it to be weekly or, monthly, but they don't want to necessarily have like 4 nights of NBA a week. You know what I mean? They're not trying to air 15 NFL games across a weekend like Fox might or something, but so I wanted to do this exercise with you guys. What events do we want to see get Netflixified? So we've talked about what that means. You can get creative. We don't have to do a set number, but let's just kind of run through the options of what we're most excited about that's kind of on the menu, things that might have rights coming up soon, things that maybe that Netflix could kind of carve off the way that they have with Christmas. Things that I think kind of fit this mold and that we really want to see as viewers. So Drew, I will let you go first. I feel like you had the least preparation because I threw this idea at you and I've been having it in Ben's mind for longer, but you can be our first victim here. What do you want to see get Netflixified in the world of sports broadcasting?
Yeah, I'm going to go off the board because I feel like UFC is kind of the clear answer given the TKO stuff. They're all already involved in Netflix with the WWE.
And so it's the only thing available.
Exactly. And yes. And and then there's the obvious one with F1, but I'll stop. So here's my off the board pick. I think Netflix would be great with the Triple Crown of horse racing. It's 3 one-off events, which is kind of in the Netflix ethos, right? They're all very big. Unfortunately, the Kentucky Derby is with NBC through 2032, so this is like 7 years down the line. The Preakness also just reached an extension with NBC. I don't think it's for as long. I can't quite remember what it is. And then Belmont's over at Fox. But if these rights were to become available, because horse racing ratings have been down the last few years for the Triple Crown, maybe some networks want to get out of their deals early. Who knows? I think Netflix could do a really great job with that sport. You could, envision a show about the jockeys or about the horses, kind of similar to the Drive to Survive style docuseries that they've done for a million sports. Yeah, that's the other part
we didn't even talk about. That's the other kind of piece of the pie with Netflix is they want to give you a docuseries.
Exactly.
They're doing a WWE one.
So it just seems like this would be kind of the perfect property because it's only 3 times a year. And it's not something people are really keyed into the rest of the year, but by, Netflixifying it, they could really grow the audience of those types of events, I think.
I mean, I agree completely. That is a perfect example. The celebrities are already there, right? So like that whole aspect of it is tailor-made. And the ability to generate attention around something that we might think of as dead right now because it just kind of pops on NBC or Fox sometime. I don't even know when those races necessarily take place. I hear about them a week or two ahead of time. If I'm not caring, I'm not going to tune in unless I'm a fan. But like again, to kind of the Netflixification idea, like that WWE row of tiles popped up last week and everybody that has the service just knew about it. Even if you don't even care about the WWE, now all of a sudden you know when Raw is on, you know where Raw is on, and when Raw is on. Most people wouldn't have been able to answer those 3 questions. Now all of a sudden they just can because it's right below them, finishing up whatever Stranger Things episode that they were watching last. So I think that's a perfect answer. What you got, Ben?
I think the NFL draft, and that's actually one that is going to be available after this year. Its rights are up starting in 2026. I think it plays perfectly into the Drive to Survive format where you could have a run up to it. You could go to the combine. You could, follow 5 prospects, have it be a top quarterback and a guy barely, fighting to get drafted and really put together an interesting series there. And then I think that it would just kind of breathe new life into that format in the draft. And if you're successful with that, maybe you not only get the NBA involved, but you turn the MLB draft into a thing. You turn the NHL draft into a thing. Like those are media properties that don't seemingly have a lot of value. I can't imagine they get sold for a lot of money right now, but I could definitely see if anything could do it. I think it could be a Netflix style, not only the eventization of it, but the Drive to Survive type of format. So to see them get involved with the draft, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's something that's readily available here pretty soon for the NFL too.
You guys nailed the assignment. I love this.
I didn't even know NFL draft was available in 2026. Not even something that was on my radar.
Yeah, I only knew because Mike Greenberg got asked about it. And he kind of like begged ESPN to keep it because I think he likes to do it. So, and understandably, but I think it is exactly the thing we're talking about where it's a weekend, it's big, it gets attention. They already do stuff with NFL media. It probably wouldn't be hard to get, some ESPN talent if needed or whatever. And they can just kind of spin it off from there. And I think people already are seeing Netflix as an NFL destination between these games and the shows. And now this would be perfect. To keep on that, just to throw out other things we have not yet said, Drew mentioned a few. The early Sunday international package, that's almost too obvious. Everybody has already been drawing a circle around that as a potential thing for the NFL if they were to maybe extend the season and have some more travel time wiggled in there, or even if they don't, they do it like a third of the weeks in the season at this point. adding the rest of the way, Netflix being so internationally focused. Amazon would probably want a bid there too, but that obviously makes a ton of sense. F1 we talked about, UFC we talked about. Another thing that's with NBC through 2032 that we haven't hit is the Olympics. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if Netflix tried to get in on that in some way, shape, or form when that deal comes up, although we know it's very, very important to NBC and obviously Peacock this past year as well. But I'll go with one that is very on the board for my answer, which is the NBA in-season tournament. They were supposedly in talks to buy those rights during this last round of negotiations. They ended up going to nobody. It's just going to be regular season games treated the same exact way. I believe Amazon or NBC, one of the new partners, is supposed to be getting the games, the finals, the knockout rounds of this NBA in-season tournament that take place in Vegas and technically don't happen in the NBA, schedule and standings. But the whole thing being on Netflix is just enough of a limited special thing that I think it could work. Maybe they start with just the knockout round games and they work backward from there or something. But I think that would be a nice way to kind of get in on the ground level with a sport like that and kind of see where you can go. Baseball doesn't really have anything like that. The NHL, doesn't really have it but that little carve out of the NBA schedule, I think could be pretty cool. The Vegas of it all obviously wouldn't hurt either, but that's where I'm at. All right, let's quickly go through as we wrap our Netflixification draft to the final topic today. They call it Late Night with Jason Kelce. It feels like saying the title of the show that I'm saying that they call it that, but that is literally the name of this late night experiment that ESPN launched as part of its new deal with Jason Kelce. Monday Night Countdown, of course, panelists, but also they were always teasing more would come. They announced this show a while back. It is running from now through basically Super Bowl week, and it's going to be nightly, Saturday, early morning, on ESPN, on Jason Kelce's YouTube channel, clipped into infinity across all of ESPN and the Kelce's channels and platforms. Viewership was poor for this. About 250,000 people or 300,000 people, average viewers on ESPN. But I think that the YouTube episode is already going to be eclipsed that probably by the time this episode goes out. Drew, you wrote about the show. We were messaging a little bit about it on Saturday. What did you think? Mission accomplished? How are we feeling about this latest foray of ESPN wanting to get back into late night?
Yeah, I don't think the mission was accomplished. I think that's fair to say. I went into this review about as friendly of an environment as I possibly could have. I decided that given the time slot of this show, 1 a.m. Friday night, early Saturday morning, it would only be fair to, have a normal Friday night out and then go back and watch this show and review it. So I was primed and ready to go. Like I was in the mood for a Jason Kelce.
Hell yeah.
and really it fell so flat that I lost my buzz almost immediately. The first 20 minutes of the show, which granted, like you got to introduce people, you got to, introduce the format and whatnot, was almost painfully bad. It was several skits.
He looked so nervous, man.
Yeah, he looked really nervous. I feel like it's so lazy to say something's overproduced, but this genuinely was overproduced. What I'm looking for at 1 a.m. coming back from a night out is not some silly skit with Jason Kelce, who is not a professional actor. If I'm watching a Jason Kelce show, I want to see him shoot the shit. Like I want it to be kind of like his podcast. And I almost think that it would be a better format for the show to just make it a podcast. Like just make it a late night version of New Heights, right? Don't go ahead and, get Jimmy Kimmel involved and, have this,
that was so bad.
Really,
that skit was so bad.
It was horrible. So
Jimmy had 15 minutes on his calendar for that, and they made it work.
For real. That's what it felt like. But I don't know. To me, it seems like the format of late night is so tired that, like, why, if you're doing an experiment, this is only 5 episodes, why aren't you going to try something new? That was the most disappointing part of it all for me. They just played it safe, and it didn't deliver at all.
You said the mission.
You love the Kelces. You gotta talk up your guy here. You gotta go positive on this.
I wanted to like it. Like I went into it like Drew, although I'm doing dry January, so unfortunately I wasn't in an altered state watching this, but so I had to watch it stone cold sober. You said the mission wasn't accomplished. Like I don't know what the mission was. Like, is it a late night show? Is it a takeoff on the best damn sports show, period? Is it just like a place for Jason Kelce to be maximum Jason Kelce and wear his Cleveland Heights Letterman jacket and have his wife have a role on the show and his parents in the crowd and profess how much he loves Philadelphia? I agree it was overproduced. I thought it was poorly written. Like the opening skit where he's talking to the stadium, like who thought that was funny?
Yeah, that was brutal.
Yeah, I don't know what they were going for. They got a good panel. They got Lil Dicky, Charles Barkley, and Brian Baldinger, and then it just like it just kind of turned into like a daytime sports talk show. It wasn't anything special. So I agree. I just don't know what I will say. Like the first version of these are always the worst. Like I can remember watching Jimmy Fallon's first ever late night show back when that was a big deal and being like, holy shit, like how is this show going to make it to episode 2? And I'm not even a big Jimmy Fallon fan, but like at least he's an adequate late night host now. And he wasn't in his first episode. So it could get better. It has nowhere to go but up. But yeah, I don't know what they were going for. It just felt like, hey, we're paying Jason Kelce a lot of money. We have to do something with him. Let's throw even more money at him.
Yeah, so that's my question is why did Kelce agree to do this? That's the part that I was sitting there wondering is, yes, ESPN wants to have him. He's very, very famous. They want to cash in on what he is right now, but you'd think you would hope he would be more savvy than to plug into something that we literally say that shows like New Heights killed that medium. And he went backwards. He already did the thing that's the next iteration of it, and he decided to do the previous generation. Like, late night shows, they used to be, with Letterman or whoever, or Conan, like, they were the bad boys. They were edgy. Nobody thinks that anymore because they can go turn on New Heights or Nightcap or whatever in the sports world or other stuff outside of the sports world and actually get edgy. And so to do the kind of sanded down version of it, even if it is, late at night, ESPN's not going to let you go crazy. And there's rules and regulations to how far you can even go, even if you wanted to. So like, it felt like inherently weakened by that. And the overproduction, I agree 100% on. You could tell like him not being a comfortable host. They were going between segments so jaggedly, like all of us, like the offensive lineman hand thing that they did where it was like 48 seconds and I was like, oh, that was a segment and now it's over. All right. It was very, very, overplanned, but underbaked, I would say. And to circle back to what you said, Drew, at the very top, bringing up the podcast, what this is missing is Travis. That to me is the answer. Like, those two guys are what works. I personally have never been as huge of a fan of any of it as other people are, so maybe I'm not the target audience in the first place here, but I think I should be, right? Like, I should be somebody who would want to watch this, even if I'm not in love with Jason Kelce. I wasn't in love with, Jimmy Kimmel originally, but okay, Jimmy Kimmel's pretty funny and I can get into it. Well, they should be wanting to get me, and it felt like unless you already love Jason Kelce, you weren't going to care about this show. And even if you did, you're probably sitting there saying, where's the other guy?
Yeah, to me, it's not even a Travis thing. It's just that, like, the entire show needs to be more laid back. Like, it was too, buttoned up, which obviously Jason Kelce wasn't comfortable with. I mean, like, the most damning thing you could say about the show is they found a way to make Charles Barkley be boring on television. Like, they had Charles Barkley reading off a script. No one wants to watch that.
And then they stole our website name to market it.
Yeah.
On top of everything else.
Yeah. So, it's like, if I'm tuning into ESPN at 1 a.m., I don't need scripted fare. Like, I want to see a few guys shooting the shit, which Jason Kelce we know is great at. Where was that during this show? I just don't understand.
Well, like, why do people like Pat McAfee? Why is Pat McAfee successful? It's because there's this authenticity with him, whether it's for you or not. Like, that dude is Pat McAfee. He is authentic. And this did not feel like the Jason Kelce that all of us have come to know over the course of the last 5 to 6 years. It felt like a very Hollywood version of Jason Kelce, which might be the only version of Jason Kelce that exists at this point. But I agree.
We want the version that smacked that kid's phone out of his hand and called him a slur. That's who we want.
Exactly.
Can we talk? Go ahead, Ben.
You referenced the ratings. I'm not worried about the ratings because I don't even think I think this is only going on TV because it's like, hey, we're gonna put it all these other places. What else are we gonna put at 1 a.m? To me, the bigger issue is I don't know anybody who watched this anywhere. You guys are the only people I have talked to about this show because you guys are the only other people I know who have watched this show. The clips didn't break through. ESPN hasn't promoted it.
That's true.
This just exists in our little sports media bubble. And I don't even see the other sports media websites talking about it.
I don't know anybody who listens to New Heights personally. So
my wife does.
I just want yeah, truly. I mean, and Kylie Kelsey's podcast is still doing crazy numbers if you go check it out. It wasn't just the announcement episode and whatever. She's getting more influencer, that world people. And so I honestly do think that it is just a very different demographic of people. But maybe that speaks to why are you having him narrate NFL Films content if moms are really the people who might actually care about this whole thing? They're also, there's going to be much more to this as Travis eventually enters the media and everything else. But as far as experiment number 1 for ESPN with the Kelce's entering media beyond just the traditional of Countdown, this was a very weird attempt. We'll probably circle back maybe when the whole run of this thing is done after the Super Bowl, but strange times at the very start of this, at the very least. Hot mics to wrap up here. We'll go quick. I'll go first. Well, hot mics, we each bring something to the table we like. Something outside of the big news that caught our attention that we maybe didn't like even, or that we loved. Amazon hiring Dirk Nowitzki is mine. We talked, Ben, about when they were circling Blake Griffin at the time, and Taylor Rooks has since been added. People know who she is. We talked about her, I think, in both our NFL and NBA announcer drafts over the course of time. She does stuff for Amazon already, made a lot of sense. But the Dirk angle of this I thought was really cool because, 1, everybody knows who he is. 2, there's been all this discussion, about how helpful it would be and maybe the gap that JJ Redick created of a more modern player who can speak to what's good and cool about the NBA right now as a little bit of an antidote to the Shaqs and Chucks who just say the game is in a worse spot and, all the negativity that sometimes comes out of inside the NBA. The other part of it, though, maybe Dirk can do some of that, although he did retire on kind of the front end of this revolution of threes and all that. But the other side of it is the league's overrun with international players right now. I think there's a big gap in not only being able to maybe do interviews and be friendly with that type of modern athlete in the NBA, but also just tell the viewer what's unique about that. What's different. The international game, how is that rubbing off on the NBA game? And nobody's doing that. There is no international former athlete in the media at all, even loosely, right? You'd think even the Olympics, they might have tried something like that, but they made Dwayne Wade. I mean, he's great, but they had Dwayne Wade do it, the most American possible dude, Kobe, Jordan, type guy that you could come up with from a player standpoint. So that just excited me when Wembanyama and Giannis and Jokic and Luka are all dominating. Dirk Nowitzki's the perfect guy to bring on, not to mention great for Amazon. People in Germany are going to, soak it up and tune in all the time and all that, but I'm just excited to hear him kind of bridge the gap there.
I'm actually going to piggyback off that, Brendon, for my hot mic. I was originally going to do the Disney Fubo venue stuff, but I feel like that probably deserves its own bigger segment. I think notable with NBC's future NBA plans is Jalen Rose. Jalen Rose will be calling his first game for NBC tonight. It'll be UCLA and Michigan. A couple months ago, he signed a deal with NBC to cover college basketball. But this is only his second appearance on the network this season. He did something early on in November in the studio, which was his original plan. I believe that was his only appearance so far. And then tonight will be his second. He'll be calling a game alongside Terry Gannon. To me, this solidifies the fact that I don't think NBC was really signing Jalen Rose for his college basketball bona fides. I think they were signing Jalen Rose to be in the Jalen Rose business when they start broadcasting the NBA in a year. So there's my hot mic. More NBA broadcasts.
Are you a hot mic? Or are you a hot mic guy? Are you a Jalen Rose guy, Drew? Do you? Because I have to admit, with NBC, I know they've gone very heavy on the former players who you may or may not remember route for football. But they also, I had hopes that they could be a little bit bigger with what they were doing. And not to say that Jalen Rose, from a media standpoint, he's very experienced. Probably a lot of people do recognize him from his TV work, but not exactly like, we're here, you know?
Sure. I could do with or without Jalen Rose. I think if we were to replace, like Perk with Jalen Rose, I think that would be a plus on ESPN. I think he's better than some, but he's not going to be someone that keeps me tuned in.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel, Ben.
I actually am a Jalen Rose guy, surprisingly. I was a big Jalen and Jacoby fan from back in the day, like 2014. I thought that was one of the better, original former athlete-led podcasts. So it's going to be interesting, though, because, anybody who's followed Jalen Rose's work knows there's a buttoned-up version of Jalen, and there's a Jalen who kind of lets it fly. So it'll be interesting to see what version of that we get.
It's also impossible to separate it. Do I not like him, or do I not like him in 15-second sound bites at halftime of an ESPN NBA game where I frankly wasn't going to get anything anyway, So I agree. Like him when he used to be on Bill Simmons' podcast, I enjoyed that version of him. The digital content they did in the Grantland days, I like that Jalen Rose. I don't think NBC is going to give that Jalen Rose to me, though, right? They're going to give me big studio, flashy, with 4 other people at a desk talking about whatever. And, I think they could have maybe done better if that's what they wanted to do. But we'll see how they round out their team. What do you got, Ben, for your hot mic?
Well, I was going to go with, speaking of Bill Simmons, I was going to go with the Bill Simmons meme that came out of Monday Night Raw from him staring straight ahead, trying to avoid watching Nikki Bella essentially twerk right next to him as they showed her in the crowd. But I'm going to keep on the trend. I'm going to go with the Blake Griffin hiring at Amazon. It's been reported. Or it had been reported, but now it's official. I'm excited for this. Like everybody says that Blake Griffin is like one of the legitimately funny athletes that he can do stand-up comedy. He does do stand-up comedy, or at least dabbles in it. I thought when he retired, okay, this is one to watch for. And he's when did he retire? Did he retire last season? Was he with the Celtics? It must have been, because I think
it was the year before in 2022 when they made the finals but lost. I think that was his last season. Yeah.
Okay. So he's kind of laid low since retiring. It's been a couple of years. I'm excited to see what this brings. All indications are he could be very good. I think he has a very, unique resume as somebody who was once one of the faces of the league and then saw his career kind of fall off due to injury. Played with a ton of great players, played against a ton of great players, just has a unique perspective and a fun personality. So I'll keep on trend here and go with an NBA media hire.
Yeah, Blake to me he is the NBA Ryan Fitzpatrick for Amazon, but if Fitzpatrick was like a legit all-pro, right? Like that's the thing, is Blake is going to bring the, hopefully, kind of honesty and tell it like it is, kind of in a funny way, but also the dude was legitimately like an MVP candidate at one point.
Yeah.
And so that's like another level of it. So yeah, I have very, very high hopes there as well. And I think that is probably the single name we've heard kind of in the rumor mill of this NBA musical chairs that had me the most excited, was Blake getting in the game, doing it young, where it's less stodgy, which is a lot of what we're stuck with in the NBA media right now. And I'm super excited. No more Michael Wilbon. Get Blake Griffin in here.
Hell yeah.
That's how I feel. All right. Thank you for listening to the play-by-play. Check us out at awfulannouncing.com. Also hit subscribe or follow on the feed if you have not already. We're here for you once a week on the podcast. We're here for you like once a minute on awfulannouncing.com and our social media channels. We're everywhere across social media, X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. So check us out there as well, and we'll catch you next week.